There we go. Welcome, everyone. Wednesday, May 7th, Council Chambers, special meeting of council. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inkle, Kappa, and Silk people. And with that, I'll need a recommendation to move into closed. A recommendation that this meeting be closed to the public pursuant sections 91L or I. Discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purpose of preparing an annual report under Section 98 Annual Municipal Report. If the council considers that disclosed could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality of the community charter. Councillor Baxter, Councillor Petrosi. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Into closed we go. And we're back. Late items, we don't have any. Public input, we don't have any. General matters, no bylaws. 7.1, City of Merritt Annual Property Tax Bylaw number 2400-2025. And I'll read the recommendation after we do that, or should I read that right now? I guess I'll read that right now. Recommendation that the City of Merritt Annual Property Taxes Bylaw number 2400-2025 be adopted. Councillor Petrosi, Councillor Etchart. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.1, new business. Draft 2024 audited financial statements presented by Mr. Mario Perotti, BDO auditors, and I'll read the recommendations after that. Mr. Perotti, you are up. I'll get you to push your mic. You, Mr. Perotti, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, for having me here this evening. As discussed, we are here to review the financial statements of the City of Merritt for the year ended December 31st, 2024. You have the full set of statements in your agenda package, but I have prepared a PowerPoint to walk us through it, just for ease of reading through. Happy to answer any questions on the full statements though as well. And if we can move to the next page. We'll start with our independent auditor's report. The statements that you have are marked draft because I cannot sign off until those charged with governance as defined in the community charter, as mayor and council have had a chance to review and approve the statements. And if it's council's pleasure to approve the statements, we will be issuing a clean audit opinion. So these statements do present fairly the results of the City of Merritt for the year ended December 31st, 2024. Now, moving on to the next page. We'll start with our statement of financial position. And so when we look at this, this is a snapshot of all of your assets and liabilities at the end of the year. And we can see that your financial assets dropped slightly from $63.9 million to $61.5 million. But likewise, we see your liabilities excluding your debt dropped by a significant number as well, from $46.7 million to $39 million. And that's an acknowledgement of the $32 million in capital that you spent this year and the utilization of that large grant that you received from the province and using that on infrastructure and recovery. But when we look at these totals are still bloated in the sense that we have a lot of recovery in and out money coming through. And so we want to look at that net financial position. Your net financial position represents if we paid off all of our obligations tomorrow, spent all the province's money, what we will be left with. And that decreased from 9.1 million to 8.1 million, which is around what historically you have sat at. So even though in your assets and liabilities, there's a lot of ins and outs, that number is still holding true on the net basis. So, you know, a slight decrease, but again, acknowledging your spend this year of 32 million on capital, not surprising that it dropped by only a little bit. We can move to the next page. We're going to take a look at your revenues and expenses. Starting with your revenues, total revenues came in at 51.3 million, down slightly from a budget of 51.9 million. And we can see that the big swings land in your government grants. And then also if we move third from the left on insurance proceeds. Your government grants did come under budget by $7 million. But not to worry, as we're going to see, your capital plan and spend also came in $7 million under. And so those two really offset each other because either the money wasn't spent that you already had and is sitting in deferred revenue, or grants weren't received, so we didn't spend on capital. So it's a net zero on your surplus. Your insurance proceeds, very difficult to budget, so that is left out, and as that money comes in, it gets recognized in revenue. So while revenue was consistent, there are a couple of swings in there. Operationally, everything was very tight to budget and nothing to report. And if we move to the next slide, this just kind of breaks down so you can visually see when we're talking about all of your revenues, where they come from. And so, just kind of have that there to see that right now between grants and your insurance, you're making up about half of your revenues, which makes sense because pre-flood you were not at $51 million revenue organization. And now as we go into the expenses, total expenses came in at 22.6 million versus a budget of $27 million. And we can see that, it's spread out throughout where we see the variances against budget. We can see protective services is underspent, which is, driven by the number of RCMP members. Community environmental and public health services are, with the housing projects that are going to be pushing this year. We see that that's where it was underspent, but that money is going to be spent going forward. And then, of course, recovery. We looked at a budget of 1.7 versus $1 million spent. Some of that's timing. Some of that is what was spent on capital versus operating. So that number will tend to fluctuate year over year. But if we go to the next slide, this is where actually we'll just skip that one and jump right ahead to the annual surplus. This is really where I want to highlight how things came together. And when we look at this slide talks about how we did against our financial plan versus our actuals. The plan was that you would have a surplus from operations of $24.9 million, and then that would be used to fund a capital spend of $39 million. We add back depreciation and amortization, which is a non-cash item, and we get to, on your budget bylaw last year, you planned a deficit of $10.8 million after your capital spend. And that was going to be funded by new borrowings and transfers out of your reserve funds to get you to zero. Now, when we look at what actually happened, we ended up with a slightly higher surplus of 28.7 million. We had capital projects at 33 million, and we ended up with a deficit before transfers of 945,000. Now, you still borrowed $7 million this year, but you transferred some money into the reserve funds to the tune of $1.8 million. So we're left with a surplus of $3.5 million here. And that surplus is between water, sewer, and general funds. And important to note that we've been wanting to build up the water and sewer utilities for a number of years, and we're seeing those getting to where they need to be. Now, when we get to the next slide, we won't go there yet. We're going to see that your total cash surplus is $22 million. Understand that you had planned to spend 6.3 or 6.2 million out of the reserve funds this year, and you didn't. Instead, you added to the reserve funds 1.8 million. So that means that of that $22 million, 8 million is already earmarked to be spent in the coming year. So we're in a good spot right now, but we need to stay focused. We need to continue to monitor our tax rates going forward and monitor our spending, because there's a lot more work to be done. And so, great work that we've seen on the budgeting and how operationally it's come in very tight. We're seeing projects coming in on budget, but we can't rest on our laurels. We have to stay diligent on that. So if we go to the next slide, this is where we talk about our reserve funds. And so the one thing I want to mention here is when we look at the bottom, our total accumulated surplus is $130 million. We've talked about the fact that that's not what you have in the bank. We're only talking that you have about $22 million. The reason why that number is so high and will continue to grow is the first line item. You're invested in tangible capital assets of just under $108 million. That represents what you've spent on your infrastructure, less your depreciation, less what you owe on it. So it's not money to spend, not money we can borrow against as a municipality. So when you're looking at your financial position, we don't want to be looking at that number. We want to look at our unrestricted of $13 million and our reserve funds of $9 million. And those are the numbers to be looking at. And as I spoke to on the last page, it's in a good spot. There's going to be ups and downs, especially as you continue to navigate the recovery. So we want to stay focused on those numbers to make sure that we have the money to continue to execute. And if we have to juggle projects or there's insurance proceeds that are delayed or there's a delay in grant funding, that you can still keep moving, because in the current economic environment, delays cost money. And so I'm going to stop there and just ask, are there any questions on the financial statement numbers before I quickly touch on the audit results?
Doesn't look like something around. You can continue.
Perfect. We'll just jump to the next page. And just on the audit results, as of today, we are substantially complete. And we can see, and we definitely saw a lot of effort going into the recovery areas, but as was discussed in close, we also see a return to the normalcy of the municipal operations, and a lot of the focus on operations is there as well. And the other item that I want to talk about in terms of how the audit went, we were quite pleased how it went, but we also know that there's a lot of scrutiny on how senior management and councils are spending out there. We do testing to make sure that spending is appropriate and there's no fraud identified in those. And we didn't have any issues identified in our testing to mayor and council and to senior management. Overall, I do want to thank your CFO and his team for the hard work that they did. They worked hard to make sure that our team were delivered the information we needed, and we know that it still is a large lift because of all that additional spending that's happening right now on the recovery. So overall, I'm very pleased with how it went, and we look forward to continuing next year with it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Any questions? So just wanted to say thank you to Mario for coming in and his BDO for doing the auditing and being very upfront. And I'm glad we had our conversation when we wanted to have it. Also want to point out the fact that our CFO and team have done an amazing job. They approached us 2 years ago with a problem, and we've worked that model. It's been tough. I'm not going to lie. Council has had to make some tough decisions and will continue to make them. We're in a rebuilding situation, but we're also in a situation where we realize that we no longer can operate as we used to pre this council. We just simply can't do it any longer. So I do take my hat off to council for making the tough decisions, but also for having the right CFO and staff in the positions to make sure that we get there, and the rest of the staff, such as Linda and the upper staff, for keeping us online. And it's been tough. I'm not going to lie to you, Mario. There's been, and Kevin, there's been times where I thought, we need to bail from this. And I actually approached you last spring saying, I'm not sure we could continue another year of this, but we've gotten here. And I want to thank the community for coming to our open houses, hearing what we had to say, and buying into the recovery. Because without that, this wouldn't have worked as well as it did. And some people were, they had some great questions. They were quite concerned about taxes. We were very honest about what was happening, and I think it went over well. So it's a good rebuilding situation, and I'm glad we got there. So my congratulations to all involved. It was really well done. So thank you very much. And with that, I will read the recommendation. Recommendation that council, in accordance with section 167 of the community charter, accept the City of Merritt consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024. Councillor Petrosi, Councillor Etchart, any questions on that? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second recommendation that council, in accordance with section 167 of the community charter, accept the City of Merritt consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024. All those, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Etchart, any questions? All those in favor? There we go. Notices of motion. We'll probably skip that for the regular council meeting. No reports from council, information items. And if that is all there is, we will terminate the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mary, for coming down.